Number 4. Now, you're never really supposed to have 4 things. You're really supposed to have 3 or 5. But it occurred to me that I actually only had 4. So here we go. 4th and final thing. A new ecosystem of companies emerges. And I think one of the most powerful things, if you think about the video that we did earlier, I don't think it's an understatement to say hundreds of thousands or millions of new companies are going to jump in and take advantage of this space. A whole new ecosystem emerges. These are companies you know. Right smack dab in the middle, you got SaaS, you got a bunch of the hardware, big data types of companies, you got Cloudera, you got Greenplum, you got Netezza, you got a bunch of those companies that we're all familiar with. You got a bunch of the big, not agencies, the big thought leaders. You got Accenture, Deloitte, IBM, those folks. We know all of them. What about these guys? Most of these companies are companies you've never heard of. You don't know these companies, and you may never know them. They're busy doing their own thing for their specific customers. And as we started to put this slide together, unfortunately, some of the folks that I was working with said, you know, Will, I think we can put together hundreds of these types of slides, but we only put together one. I don't want to bore you. So in terms of our ecosystem, why is it going to change? Why are millions of new companies going to emerge? Number one, the concept of the accidental data company. What do I mean by that? Data companies are in business. They didn't intend to be data companies. They didn't start as data companies. They didn't want to be data companies, but they find themselves as data companies. So think about Equifax, Experian, some of those types of companies. They used to do credit scoring and some of the information they provide. Massive and massive amounts of data now, trying to figure out how to monetize that data. But more specifically, think about the guy that wrote Angry Birds, the guy that built it. I can't remember his name. Do you think when he was building it, before dreaming of making millions and selling out to Zynga, do you think he thought that that was going to be an amazing way to create data? No. He was building something that he thought was going to be really cool, and he did it. And what is it now? It's an absolutely massive data creation engine to understand what people are doing, where they're doing it, and when they're doing it. Think about Facebook. I don't know Mark Zuckerberg personally, but I suspect when he decided to build Facebook, he thought about a social networking company. He didn't think about a data company. But what are they sitting on now? They talk to 1 out of every 7 people in the world. They're a data company. Some of these companies are equipped to deal with data. Most of them are not. If you didn't found yourself as a data company, you probably don't have the infrastructure to make sense of that data. So hundreds of thousands of companies will emerge to partner with those companies to figure out how to make sense of that data. Just like the IT revolution spawned millions of companies, analytics is going to do the same. But there's also the productionalization of analytics. So what do I mean by that? If you think about high velocity type of data, complex data, whatever your environment is, you can't really extract it. It's tough to sample from it, pull it out of here, do something with it, figure it out, and then put it back in over here. It doesn't really work that way. That's not the big data analytics environment. It's hard to provide classical sorts of consulting services on big data. So what we're in business to do, and other companies are in business to do, is to find very high-value questions, niche data, and produce answers to those specific questions. In order to do that, you've got to have technology. If you're working with a telecom provider, you're working with an ad network, you're working with anybody that's got an online presence, you have massive amounts of data on your hand. And in order to make sense of that, you've got to build technology to do something with that. So analytics as products, I think, has only just begun. And last, data itself, I think, becomes a vertical. When you're a small company, you spend time, number one, trying to pay the bills, but you also think about how you're going to build your brand. And it occurred to me as we started to grow what our specialization was. It wasn't that I knew the utility business specifically well, not that I know the automotive business pretty well. I might know the mobile business reasonably well, but it's data. It's information and how to turn that information into insights that as a company, we know extremely well. So branding ourselves sort of communications data, that type of information becomes its own vertical. Because that type of data, if you think about knowing what somebody's doing in their car, that helps high-risk financing companies decide, hey, do I want to give a loan to this person? Or insurance companies, is this a good return on my investment? You think about that type of data, that type of underlying data vertical, that serves lots of classical verticals today.